Sylvester Stallone may be recognized as Rocky or Rambo, but no one can ever erase the strange face he had in the 90s when he tried to transition from being an action hero to a policeman controlled by his mom. This dark face, which even Stallone himself doesn't want to remember today, leaves us with many questions, such as what was the reason for even attempting, or perhaps more importantly, was it really so bad or simply misunderstood by the critics of that time? Well, to answer all this, first, we have to take a look back at his career. Well, not that far back. Stallone would rise to fame after his script Rocky, and in 1976, his story would begin. In 1977, he would be nominated for Golden Globes, giving him the confidence to continue his saga in the following years. On the other hand, in 1982, he would star in First Blood, where his second most popular character, Rambo, would appear. This would also start a series of sequels that would be box office hits. So Stallone's path in the 80s would be solidified with Rocky and Rambo, portraying him as an action character. And although his acting wasn't always the best, his tough and muscular image earned him the status of an icon in this decade. Other movies that would catapult him in this decade as the prototype of an action hero would be Over the Top, Tango and Cash, and Cobra. However, despite all his success in Hollywood, one man would be a key element in Stallone's significant shift towards comedy: Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's well known that in the 80s, Stallone and Arnold would compete for the position as the ultimate action man in movies.
I've read that you guys actually hated each other for a while.
Well, we were very competitive. Yeah, I think hate's a good word.
This rivalry began even earlier when the two actors met for the first time at the 1977 Golden Globe Awards. Stallone was nominated for Best Actor, while Schwarzenegger was in the category of New Star of the Year. Reportedly, during the ceremony, Stallone apparently threw a ball of flowers at Schwarzenegger. Later, Stallone mentioned in an interview with Variety that Schwarzenegger laughed at him when he didn't win the award. He said that, from that moment on, our DNA hated each other. Another one of their encounters happened in September 1988, when the New York Post reported that Stallone and his team entered a nightclub, saw a photo of Schwarzenegger on the wall, and demanded it be removed so Stallone wouldn't leave. In the end, the owner removed the photo, and Stallone's team destroyed it. The upside is that for us, the competition between these two gave us some of the best movies that today, at least for me, still enjoy. Well, at least the action ones, because when it comes to comedy, I do have my doubts. In 1987, director Ivan Reitman had a meeting with Arnold and Danny DeVito, and the idea of creating a comedy movie starring both of them came up. Thus, in 1988, Twins arrived, along with Arnold's intention to continue participating in different types of films. This is where the rivalry with Stallone would come into play again. Stallone couldn't stay behind, and by the early 90s, he decided to experiment with the comedy genre. Being realistic, Stallone had already been involved in movies with comedic elements like Death Race 2000 from 1975, Tango and Cash, and a purely comedic one like Rhinestone from 1984, where he shared the screen with the already famous Dolly Parton. However, these were quite isolated cases, and without a commitment like the one he had in the 90s to once again surpass Arnold, and perhaps to stop being typecast in the same roles he had been playing up to that point. So, in 1991, came Oscar. John Landis would be in charge of directing this strange change for Stallone, and it would be a comedy based in the 1967 film of the same name, which in turn was based on a play, hence the movie unfolds in a mansion. In the film, Stallone would play Snaps Provolone, the boss of a mafia group who decides to retire after promising his dying father to be a good man. On the day of his retirement, he encounters several obstacles to test his new path away from crime. First, his accountant asks for his daughter's hand in marriage. His daughter Lisa, played by a young Marisa Tomei, turns out to be pretending to be pregnant to leave home, and believing that the child was the accountant's, Stallone forces him to marry her. I think this must be the movie where I've seen her the youngest. and although somewhat ridiculous, I think she performs his role adequately. Here, a series of confusions would begin. The woman the accountant wanted to marry was not his daughter Lisa. She was a woman named Teresa who had pretended to be Propolone's daughter. However, in the end, when they are hiring a new maid, she turns out to be an old love of Provolone and Teresa's mother. So in the end, the accountant was indeed in love with his daughter. On the other hand, we can see the brilliant Tim Curry playing Dr. Thornton, a linguist who ends up making a deal with Provolone to marry Lisa. This was for me one of the highest and funniest points of the movie, along with Chazz Palminteri being a criminal but quite sentimental in the end when Provolone's two daughters married the accountant and Dr. Thornton. I have to admit that I hadn't seen this movie before, and I was surprised. While Stallone's performance isn't the best, and I believe he could have been replaced without the movie losing its charm. Tim Curry, Marisa Tomei, Ornella Muti, and the Finucci brothers, played by Harry Shooter and Martin Ferretto, make the movie not feel weak or low budget. Kurtwood Smith even makes an appearance, another surprise for me. The story seemed quite hilarious to me, and unlike other comedies, this one is not simple and empty. The movie knew how to balance complexity and comedy just right. Of course, this is because it was a remake, so it's not like it was revolutionized comedy. Unfortunately, in 1991, the movie was a box office flop, only grossing $23 million, not reaching its $35 million budget. Several critics destroyed Stallone, although some others, like Roger Ebert, didn't quite agree and gave it a more positive review.
Boy, this is really a dog, you know, and then I laughed, and then I laughed again. Then the Finucci brothers came in, and I really started laughing. And then when Tim Curry comes in as that Dr. Poole, the elocution coach, I was laughing and then at the end of the movie, I sat there and I said, I don't know how this movie did it, but it did just what you said it did. It turned itself around. It's a good movie. It's a funny movie.
Despite this failure, Stallone wouldn't give up and would continue his comedy adventure with Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. As unbelievable as it may seem, Arnold would appear again, and Stallone's participation would be solely due to him. It turns out that the lead role was offered to both actors, and although Arnold had no plans to be in it because he thought it was garbage, he made Stallone believe he was very interested so that Stallone would accept the role without hesitation.
That's right, and so I read the script and it was a piece of I mean, let's be honest. And so I said to myself, I'm not gonna do this movie. So then they went to Sly, and then Sly called me and he says, hey, have they ever talked to you about this movie? And I said, yeah. I said, I was thinking about doing it. I said, this is a really brilliant idea, I said, this movie. And so when he heard that, because he was in competition, he immediately called him and says, look, whatever it takes, I do the movie. The
movie would be about a meddling mother, Tootie, interfering in the life of Sergeant Joe Womowski, played by Stallone. Inadvertently, she buys a fully automatic gun, leading to a dangerous encounter with criminals. Unlike Oscar, in my opinion, this one feels like the script was written in half an hour. It feels quite cheap, and oftentimes ridiculous and cringeworthy. I don't think I even liked it when I first saw it as a kid, and I forgot about it pretty quickly until today, when honestly, I chuckled a couple of times, but not because of the jokes themselves, but because of how ridiculous it could be.
Mom, what are you doing here?
Mommy's gotta change you.
Ah! Mommy, I don't want to be changed.
I've gotta change you.
I don't think even Still Getty as Tootie could save the movie, not to mention Stallone, who once again plays a quite replaceable and unmemorable role. As expected, the critics tore it apart, even to this day. In the recent Netflix documentary Sly, he also pointed out without a doubt that the role that distanced him the most from who he really was the one he played in Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. After this great failure, Stallone would leave behind his face and only occasionally take on comedy roles like in Spy Kids 3D or Grudge Match. Instead, to revive his career, he would continue in action movies, successfully reviving his old successes with Creed, Rambo, or creating new action franchises like The Expendables, where he would finally end his rivalry with Arnold. While Stallone may not have had a great career in comedy movies, I believe that at least I respect actors who at least try to break out of the mold they've always been in. In Stallone's case, in my opinion, it didn't work out very well, although I must say again that Oscar seemed quite acceptable to me. Perhaps if he had continued down the path of movies with a plot not so simple, he could have achieved something similar to what his great rival Arnold accomplished. Or maybe, as he himself mentions in Sly, they weren't the type of movies that reflected who he was or wanted to be. In the end, all of this just remained as a dark phase of a couple of movies that were a failure, and that many people today don't even remember. Or maybe they just want to think it was a nightmare.